Welcome to Teaching Brewed. Today's episode is geared more towards the parents than it is towards the teachers.
Yeah, we're taking a bit of a different lens on this one. We've talked about the issue of cyberbullying a couple of different times in the past. And this time round, we're actually directing this at two different lenses at the same time. We're kind of throwing this out at parents, and we're also throwing it out at if your child is actually being the cyberbully and how to manage that.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of a different lens today.
And to start with, I just want to point out that just because your kid might be cyberbullying somebody else, that doesn't mean that you're the bad parent.
No, don't let that influence your perception of who you are, and don't let that kind of be seen as a reflection upon yourself.
You as the parent do need to deal with it, but it's not a reflection on you.
Exactly. And it has to be kind of a trifecta approach to dealing with the child who is a cyberbully, because you've got to have the school involved, you involved, and the child involved. So you've got to have that three-way approach to this. Otherwise, it's not going to be effective.
Exactly.
So the first thing we want to kind of get into is what the signs that your child might actually be a cyberbully. Actually, believe it or not, the government of Canada actually has a really, really good website on this, and actually lists potential ways to solve the problem. And but they do list some signs that your child may be a cyberbully. So I'm quickly going to dart over a few of those. Now, bear in mind, a lot of these are more directed at kids from like kind of grade 5, 6, and upwards, unless your child is super tech savvy as a young kid, in which case they're way ahead of the curve. So some of the signs your child might be involved in cyberbullying if they have a number of social networking accounts on multiple sites. There might be a sign. You overhear insults, snarky comments, sarcasm towards a lot of children or other people in their daily life. Another huge sign, when you ask them about how things are going online, if they're way more secretive than normal. Now, don't get me wrong, I get it. A lot of kids will just go, "Oh, good," and that's normal. That's a very standard thing to do. After all, we're talking about preteens and teenagers here. But if it's a little more secretive than normal, is kind of what we're getting at here. Like, they might try and really deliberately hide their device from you, or really get annoyed that you interrupted them. Especially if you walk in on them. There's a million reasons why that could happen, but that's a possibility. It's a possible sign. If your child is with friends who are potentially exhibiting behaviors that are not making great choices, it's kind of how we would say it.
If your child is hanging out with mean girls.
Or boys. Yep, that would be a sign. Yes. And if they often seem to show that words or actions don't seem to realize that they hurt others, or they don't seem to care, that's often a sign that it could be cyberbullying, or it could be leading into it. Yeah, so those are just some quick signs that a child may be involved in it.
Exactly. And the thing is that your child might not even realize that what they're doing is actually cyberbullying.
Yeah.
So before you tear a strip off them, find out what they actually know.
And as an aside, tearing a strip off them isn't really a good thing to do right from the get-go.
No. But no. I understand that it is a knee-jerk reaction.
Make sure you have some hard evidence that they actually are before you kind of jump the gun and start accusing.
Yeah.
No teenager likes being accused of something, especially something they did not do.
And speaking from teaching teenagers, every teenager feels that they're being accused of something, even when they're not.
Oh, yes. It's just,
It's a brain thing.
Yeah, it is a brain thing. So, just some little things to do to not do if your child's involved in cyberbullying. Number one, don't freak out. Talk with other adults to work through how you're feeling, so that way you can minimize how much your emotions are involved in it. And don't try and deny it or blame others for a situation. Like, if your child is involved, then it's okay to accept that involvement. But you don't need to, let them have it. Trying to shift the blame to other friends of theirs might also be a bad idea. Like, don't make them be the victim. If they are in fact cyberbullying, they should probably be owning that behavior.
They absolutely need to own that behavior.
Oh, yeah. And if cyberbullying was done in some sort of retaliation, make sure they understand it doesn't justify their actions, and don't let that be justification for you. Don't go the eye for the eye route and making that okay in your mind.
And the thing is that some cyberbullies are actually victims of something else. And this is their way of getting revenge. Keep in mind, these are kids. Their brains are still developing, and they don't always know I don't want to say the difference between right and wrong, but it's the fact that the way their end justifies the means could be different from yours. And they don't have a big arsenal of coping mechanisms. So they're going to go and reach for what they know or what they have heard works.
Yeah, and sometimes, because those emotions are often from their end of things, and could be from yours too, but I mean, their end of things, kind of knee-jerkish, and where the maturity may be still growing in them. There might be some more emotional responses should you react to them in certain ways.
So let's talk a little bit about the prevention of it, so that you don't even need to get to the point where you discover your child is a cyberbully. And one of the ways of doing that is to be very involved and to be very transparent yourself. So when your child is starting to make noises about wanting their own device and wanting their own accounts, which could be as early as 8 or 9 years old, start involving them in your thought processes when you're on social media. Involve them in conversations and say, this person just made this comment on a photo. What do you think about that? And if they say, oh, that's really mean, that's a positive thing, and you can reinforce that. And if they say, oh, yeah, I totally agree, that gives you an insight into their thinking process, into their brain, and it allows you to help teach them empathy and how to be kind to others online.
Yeah. And just keep your ears open for how they're interacting with their friends online. And keep your ears open for how they're interacting with, especially like any form of social media. Now, I know it's hard to be, the big brother to your kid, on you know what I mean by like being the overlord of their technology. And I know the knee-jerk reaction is, if you suspect your child of being cyberbullied, to blanket, shut off the technology. However, that's often not the best knee-jerk reaction when you find that stuff out.
There is a way around parental controls. There always has been, and there always will be.
Now, don't get me wrong. Limiting internet usage and limiting social media time and limiting their use on their devices might be a decent consequence to cyberbullying if you do, in fact, find out they are.
Absolutely.
But shutting it off, blanket, and saying, no, you're not getting this anymore for the rest of your life, may not gain their confidence, for one, for them to talk to you about stuff, but it may not also...
it doesn't teach them the right way to go about doing things.
No. And it may cause them to try and rebel even more. You can find... Yeah.
Definitely, there needs to be consequences.
Yeah, no doubt.
But there also needs to be education, and there needs to be a way for them to work their way back into gaining trust.
Yeah, and that needs to be explicit, and it needs to be let known that, you know what, you've made a big mistake here, where there are going to be consequences to it, but you can regain the trust. You can prove yourself to kind of be the person we know you are.
And again, that starts early. Have the conversation about consequences when the child is first wanting to get that device and to get that social media account, and explain to them that, they have to earn that trust and allow them to work towards it, make it clear what the consequences are, and enforce those consequences when they mess up, because they will mess up. They're kids.
Yeah. And the thing to remember is give them ownership of the consequences too. Talk to them about what consequences they think are reasonable and what consequences they don't think are reasonable. Now, there's obviously going to be a point in that conversation where you might have to say, no, this is the way things are, because they might try to lighten up the consequences on themselves, like we all would try to do. But try and have them have some level of ownership in what's going to happen in the future. That way, there's no surprises if things get worse, but there's also great rewards if things get better.
Yes. And that could be something like you start off with, no texting your friends after dinner time.
Yeah.
And then it becomes, okay, you can now text your friends, not during dinner, but after dinner, you can text them until 8 p.m. And they can gradually go on and gain more trust from you. At the same time, you need to continue that conversation about, you know what, I trust you to do the right thing, but I am going to be checking up on you every once in a while just to make sure. And that's going to be unannounced and unexpected, and I need you to be on board with that. And most kids are. If kids feel like generally they're trusted, then they're okay with people checking up on them. The problems tend to start when they feel like their parents are, they have a stranglehold and they're constantly monitoring and constantly reading over their shoulder or putting in these parental controls that they feel are too strict. That's when the kids will start to find ways around things. So they may set up secret accounts that you don't know about. And that's where they will be doing things that you don't want them to do. Whereas in the accounts that you are checking on a regular basis, they'll be little angels.
Yeah. The thing is, you might want to also get yourself a bit tech savvy too. Because if you are worried that they have secret accounts, there are ways to figure that out. So get yourself a bit tech savvy. Try and, if your kids trust you, this won't be an issue. Not saying this won't be an issue, but it'll minimize the issue.
Yeah.
But if you are worried about it, then there are ways to find out if they have secretive accounts, and especially if they're devices that you've bought for them. So
all
real
of
quick,
it is easy to prevent. Well, not easy to prevent. All of it is preventable, but make sure that you are demonstrating it yourself.
yes.
Your kids are watching you. They are looking over your shoulder, even when you don't realize it. So it's just like when you get into the car and you buckle up your seatbelt every single time, your kids see you doing that, and so it becomes second nature that they do it as well.
Yep. And let's be honest, if they see you swearing online, they're going to want to swear online. If they see you or hear you yelling at someone on the phone, they're going to be inclined to mimic that behavior.
They absolutely are. And if they see you having a rant at an editorial online and, maybe not having an empathetic approach, they will mimic that too.
Yep. So just be aware that our actions, their actions might be a reflection of ours and what we do. But don't be afraid to have that sit-down conversation and kind of let them know what the consequences will be. And like we said, the consequences, just real quick, before we finish this off today, can be something as simple as you limit their internet usage. If it's really serious, you may want to take them off the internet for a little while and let them earn their way back through good behaviors, through a set of consequences that make sense to the action, depending on what the action is, of course. Not all actions are created equal, and not all consequences, if you do the natural consequences thing, are equal as well. You may want to slowly bring it back in. You may want to have if it gets really serious, you may want to have some sort of parental control on it, and then take it off eventually. But yeah, and always remember that if they're under 13, they shouldn't even have social media accounts to begin with.
Because technically, it's not allowed.
Nope. So to always remember that one too, that if they do have multiple social media accounts and your child is 11, you may want to find out how they got those social media accounts. And that could be a good starting point conversation for anything to do with cyberbullying.
Yeah. And, when you do start rolling those things out, then do it as a joint effort. Maybe you get the family dog an Instagram account and your child is the one that gets to post things to it.
Yeah.
There's a few thoughts for you. And there are further resources on our website, teachingbrewed.com. If you liked this, please subscribe. Please leave us a comment on whatever platform you found this on, whether that's iTunes or OmniPlayer. And of course, please share it. Pass it on.
Absolutely. All right, folks, have a great day.
Bye.
Bye.